All right, all right. Welcome once again, everyone, to your Wednesday night webinar. I am Dr. Patrick McGrath. I'm the Chief Clinical Officer here at NOCD. NOCD, your sponsor tonight. And, hey, Joey. Hi, nice to see you.
Hi,
Welcome.
nice to see you too. Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you here. NOCD, a downloadable app you get through Google Play or iOS. Please check us out. And if you're looking for teletherapy anywhere in the United States or Canada or the UK or Australia, we would be more than happy to work with you. And we also work with things like hoarding and BFRBs, things like trichotillomania or excoriation or skin picking and ticks. Lots of stuff going on. And if you know someone who might not be ready quite yet for prime time therapy, we even do NOCD 411 sessions, which are educational sessions that we do to educate friends or family members on what obsessive compulsive disorder is, so that they might learn how to support their loved one and maybe help to convince them a little bit to get into the therapy world. So it's always a joy to be here, and it's always fun to have a guest. Joey, tell us a little bit about you and why are you on my StreamYard with me tonight?
Well, my name's Joey. My last name is Gerbino. I am 30 years young. I live on Long Island, New York. I am a New York native, born and raised. I have been dealing with OCD now that I can pinpoint it for the majority of my life since early childhood. And I came to realize that once I was officially diagnosed, which is going on 2 years ago now. And I have subtype wise primarily harm OCD, perfectionism, and Puro. And I have been undergoing therapy now for going on 2 years ever since being diagnosed. I've had two lovely therapists, Joe Cook and Tiffany Merritt. I can't say enough positive things about them. And I am currently in recovery, thankfully, but as we all know, recovery is linear, and I would be lying if I said I don't have ups and downs on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. But I've come to learn to not only accept, but to live with it. And I feel that where I'm at in comparison to where I once was at is truly incomparable. And I owe a lot of that, the majority of that, to NOCD.
Well, I'm thrilled to hear that, and thank you for being here tonight. I think it's always wonderful for our listeners to see the face of OCD, right? And to hopefully not feel alone. Joey, was there a point in your life where you ever thought, I'm the only person in the world who thinks this way or has this, and what's wrong, and why isn't anyone else like me, or anything like that?
Absolutely. During my darkest times with battling OCD, at that point in time, primarily harm as well, I felt like I was the only person dealing with this, and that I was entirely alone, and that I was an outcast. And the worst part about it was that I felt as though I couldn't express any of the above to anyone out of fear of what would come of it. And that was the hardest part for me at the beginning stages. And it's quite unforgettable, to be honest with you. It's probably the worst part, in my opinion, personally, of having OCD, is feeling alone.
And one of the things that comes up, and I think this is very appropriate actually as we approach the holiday season here, being around family, and sometimes people are very hidden because they don't want anyone to know about their OCD. And then maybe they are caught doing compulsions, and then they have to come up with excuses for why they were doing what they were doing because they don't want to spill the beans or anything.
Absolutely.
And maybe they have families that are not supporters of the idea that mental health is something that needs the time of day. Just walk it off and stop it, and you'll be fine. Was that ever an issue? Not to throw any family under the bus or anything like that, but have you had to kind of wander
I
through that experience at all?
I
Or
personally am blessed when I say that I'm both thankful and grateful for the fact that I've never experienced anything like that. I've
fantastic.
had,
That's awesome. Good for you.
yes, a very solid support system through thick and thin throughout this entire experience to date. And everyone around me, from my immediate family to my friends who are my family, because I don't have a large size immediate family. So my friends throughout the years have become my family,
Of course.
have all been from day one very much so heavily involved in supporting me and getting me honestly to the place and the point where I'm currently at. If it weren't for them and my partner and his family, I honestly can't say that I would probably even be here right now.
Um, that's another thing that comes up too, that notion of not wanting to be here, or would I be here? And we
Mhm.
hear stories about, even around the holidays, stressors are up. There's
Mhm.
thoughts about, suicidal ideation or those
Right.
types of things. We know that depression comes along with OCD as well
Mhm.
too. How has that struggle been for you, and to come through that?
To date, I actually was diagnosed with suicidal ideation when I was at my lowest of lows.
Mhm.
And it was decided between myself, my family, and again, my friends, that the best option for me at the time was to admit myself.
Mhm.
And I can honestly say that it was the best decision we all made collectively, because I truly was at death's door at one
Mhm.
point, and I wasn't thinking about anything else other than escaping from
Yeah.
my then reality, because it was truly unbearable. And I believe strongly that if I hadn't admitted myself for the 2 weeks I was within the program, that I was in a psychiatric unit, I wouldn't be here having this conversation with you right now.
Right. And thankfully,
Mhm.
you are here with me having
Thank
this
you.
conversation with me right now.
Yes.
So
Thank you.
I'm very excited to have it. So, Joey,
Mhm.
what we're going to do is we'll go back and forth on some things like this with some Q&As,
Mhm.
but we're going to get to some of the questions that are in the scroll as well too.
Okay.
And I'm always going to ask your opinion, because the lived experience side of this is something I can't provide
Mhm.
necessarily. And so
Mhm.
happy to have someone who's willing to kind of talk about that. So
Absolutely.
we'll start with Lisa. She says, "Good evening. What are some good home ERP exercises for contamination OCD instead of constantly washing my hands or using hand sanitizer? Thank you." Well, of course, those are not exposures. Those are coping strategies, which work well in the short term, but are not good long term things. We refer to those often as safety seeking behaviors, and we know that the occurrence of safety seeking behaviors is well, it's just something that maintains OCD more than anything else. The more compulsions you do, the worse OCD gets instead of the
Mhm.
better it gets. Even though it convinces you, if you keep doing more compulsions, everything's going to get better. So it's a sneaky little disorder of a thing
Right.
that it tells you to do those types of things. So, Lisa, one of the things that we would want to say is you want to be able to live with that contamination and the idea of contamination, because we know in OCD there doesn't even have to actually be contamination there. Just the thought of contamination is enough to make people want to go wash their hands. So, Lisa, we want you to work on living with the idea that contamination is there, it is around, but just because it is there does not mean that it's bad, awful, horrible, or dangerous, or that anything is going to happen to you whatsoever. Joey, did you struggle with any contamination concerns ever in the
I
past? Or
can't say I have, but I
no?
definitely
Okay.
agree with everything that you said in regards to it. I feel like those types of compulsions only further enable you being in the vicious cycle.
Yeah. Yeah. And Lisa said she wanted to ask because she noticed her OCD always gets worse during the holidays for some reason, maybe more stress or anxiety related. We do know that people will have that happen. It could also be the winter time can be difficult for people. There can be some seasonal affective disorder types of issues. Some people report not having the sun around as much is just a downer for them. And OCD loves to take advantage of anything that's a change, right? Some people will say that OCD is worse in the morning. Other people say it's worse in the evening when they're tired. So everyone kind of has their thing when OCD might be worse.
Absolutely.
Mhm. Christina says, happy Thanksgiving and thanks for the video I put out yesterday. Oh, well, absolutely, Christina. It was fun to do. So Captain says, first, I can't be here live. You got an exam, but he wants to let everyone know that, yes, went to the grocery store. Good. Because last week I put out challenges to everybody to do something and to come back this week and talk about it. So all of you who put out your challenges last week, write what you did in your challenge here in the scroll. We want to hear about it, and we want to be able to support everybody for having done the challenges that they promised that they would do, to go out and do those exposures and not let OCD take over everything. Captain also asked for a random question. Are SSRIs proven to work beyond placebo effect for OCD, or is the benefit primarily placebo? I think there's a lot of who you ask on that, right? If you look at like the author of Anatomy of an Epidemic, you would probably find someone who is telling you that there's lots of placebo effects. But if you look at the American Psychiatric Association, you'll see lots of support for medications that are out there as well too. So personally, I have seen people take medications and have good effects from those types of things, right? So I can tell you what I know from a clinical standpoint, that there are people who have tried therapy and done very well on their own. There are people who have tried therapy and then added medication, and that was helpful as well to them too. The only thing that I will suggest is even the American Psychiatric Association does not suggest using only medication as a way to treat OCD. They suggest either ERP or ERP plus medication. Joe, I don't know if you've gone the medication route at all or found anything helpful for you. And, that great story.
Yes. Yes, I currently am taking medication. I have been for going on 2 years now.
Hmm.
I am currently taking Zoloft primarily for my OCD, and Boost Bar and Abilify for my anxiety and what potentially could trigger my major depressive disorder.
Sure. And have you found those to be helpful to you?
Absolutely. I feel as though for me, they definitely are and have been a helping aid in my recovery, and that much more beneficial while undergoing ERP therapy.
Fantastic. So absolutely, meds do play a role in the treatment that we do with people. I, as a psychologist, never mandate meds for people, but there are definitely times where I've said, listen, I think we've gone as far as we're going to get. There's something kind of blocking, and maybe there's something else that we need to add to this that could be helpful.
Mhm.
So wonderful. BizBiz says OCD about potentially getting sued for leaving a bad review personal statement. I know it's unlikely, but part of me thinks it's likely. Should I just distract myself? No, do not just distract yourself. Distracting yourself becomes a compulsion. We do not want to do anything of that nature whatsoever. We can never guarantee anything, right? I can never give you a 100% guarantee that someone will not sue you for a bad review or a personal statement. But I also can't guarantee that someone else won't sue you for a good review or a good personal statement either. So is it best maybe we never write anything and we never say anything? Maybe I should never do this webinar ever again, because maybe one day someone won't like something I said and sue me for it. And then I would just say, well, I have to stop doing this, everyone. This will be the last webinar ever. I don't want to get sued by somebody, so I'm going to be done, right? Or we can have opinions, and we can leave opinions on things. We have forums to be able to do such a thing. And remember, OCD has that specialness notion. So if other people appear to be leaving reviews and not getting sued, why is it that you would get sued if you were to leave a review? I would ask you to think about that. Right? Jalissa says, Hey, Doc, what's your take on ACT therapy? Also, what do you do when you're doubting your diagnosis? I suffer with harm, sexual taboo, OCD, and it's terrifying. It makes me believe I may be this horrible person. I'm going to give you that second part, Joey, to talk about because I think you'll have something to say about that. I just have a feeling. But
Absolutely.
here's my take on ACT. Michael Tuig, a great friend of mine who does a lot of ACT work, years ago was at a conference and came up on stage and had a bunch of people on stage with him who are good luminaries in the field, and others of us in the audience that were there as well too. I wasn't a luminary at the time. Maybe I am. I don't know if I am yet, but I'd like to. I'd like to hope one day I become. And he was talking about ACT, and I remember standing up and raising my hand and said, Michael, I want to thank you for letting me know that I'm an ACT therapist, because everything you just talked about is what I do in ERP. We might have a little bit different language, but here's my take. If you're doing phenomenal ERP, you're doing ACT, and if you're doing awesome ACT, you're going to have ERP going on. So I think that there's a lot of relationships there personally. That's my take on it. Don't take that as, going back to business. Don't sue me for that, anybody, if you disagree, right? But that is my take on it. Now, Joey, your take on the second part. What do you do when you're doubting your diagnosis and having these things feels like it makes you believe you may be this horrible person?
Well, OCD in and of itself is the doubting disorder, so it's going to make you do that.
Preach. Go for
And
it.
I have come to realize that. I've learned to accept that. And you have to sit with that uncertainty, I would say, because at the end of the day, nothing is 100% certain with anything. And maybe someone is a horrible person, maybe they're not. But I can say, from my perspective, whomever it is that was asking this question is not a horrible person. And it is your OCD making you question that, because I was myself in that boat for a very long time. When I thought I was evil, I thought I was either already or becoming a monster. And I didn't know if it was conscious, subconscious, either or both. But I learned to accept the possibility of either or. And while working with my therapist through ERP and after being diagnosed, I accepted the fact that I wasn't. And I know for certain, despite living with uncertainty, that I'm not any of those things, because I lead with my morals and my values. And that's what I would focus on. Anyone leading with your morals and your values and the core of you, you know, in your heart of hearts, whether you are evil or not. And I felt, for me, that was the most, even though we're not supposed to provide reassurance, it was the most assuring thing for me, because when I learned to base my life and my mindset off of my morals and my values, it was life changing ever since.
And of course, recognize that OCD will try to get you to doubt your morals and your values and all those types of things
Absolutely.
as well too. So,
Hmm.
you know, I'm going to go on your doubting disorder piece a little bit more.
Hmm.
The notion, of course, Jalissa, that we could ever give somebody the ability to believe 100% that they're a good person when they have OCD is kind of ridiculous, right? Because
Hmm.
OCD, as the doubting disorder, will doubt every answer that it's given, and therefore, when told you're a fine person and everything's okay, you're just going to doubt it. Jalissa goes on, what could be some good exposures for these themes like harm or sexual OCD? One of the things that I tell people to do is when driving, I like to assign points to anybody crossing the street that's driving in front of me. So, bike riders or children or adults or strollers or anything of that nature. I have been doing this since I was a child because I watched this movie called The Toxic Avenger. It's like a B horror film kind of thing, and in there, it's a nerdy kid who's thrown in a vat of basically, radioactive material, and he emerges as the Toxic Avenger. He's massive and he's really strong, and he goes out and he destroys bullies all over the world, is his job. And he's got the Toxic Avenger mobile. It's this horrible, it's like a Plymouth Valari. It's one of the, awful car kind of thing. And he's driving around and he sees one of the bullies on his bicycle, and he's like, oh, bully on a bike, 25 points. And then he runs him over. Well, that stuck with me ever since I was a child. And now I can't help but assign point values to everybody who's walking or riding or anything on that. I never once have I gone and run anybody over with it, but it is just something that is stuck in my head that I don't get out. So Jalissa, some of those types of things are the stuff that we might have people purposely do to recognize that even if you did that, it's still not making you do anything. I mean, OCD's got this idea that there's thought action fusion, right? A thought is equal to an action. Thinking something is just as bad as doing something. So if you think about hitting someone with your car, it's just as bad as hitting someone with your car. Well, instead of avoiding driving, which many people might want to do, or only ride in a car with someone, not be the responsible driver, I want people to drive, and I want people to think, hey, there's a person I could hit. Oh, there's a person I could run over. Oh, there's a family that I could wipe out or something like that. And recognize that just because you think those things does not make them true or real, right? We can all have thoughts. Thoughts don't make things happen. And that becomes the goal.
Absolutely. Thoughts don't equal actions. Thoughts are just thoughts.
They do not. Correct. Oh, hey, we're 20 minutes in. That's our third of the way reminder. You're watching the NOCD webinar on Wednesday night, brought to you by the NOCD app. Check us out, download us for free. And if you're looking for teletherapy across the US or Canada or the United Kingdom or Australia, we are available to you. You can download that app and click the therapist button, or reach out to us at nocd.com as well. Sunshine says, hi, Dr. M. Any advice for false memory OCD that is more in the moment, thought action fusion? My therapist has me acknowledging the thoughts and simply not engaging with them. What do you recommend? Well, I think that that's a great idea. That's exactly what we would want to do. And B, once you've gotten kind of used to that, I even like to taunt the thoughts, right? I've had people say, all right, I'll one up you on that. What if I did this instead? And then, okay, well, you know what? Now I'm going to have to live with the idea that it was a possibility as well, too. And get to a point where OCD is going to try to throw something at you, and you throw something right back at it and say, well, yeah, well, I'll see that with this, and I call you on this one. And OCD is like, well, dang, I didn't know you were going to go there. Okay, well, maybe, yeah, wow, all right, I'm just going to go sit in the corner now for a while, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, everyone who's listened to this show enough knows that it is a possibility, because I've talked about maybe having done it on here. So now maybe I did do it, and maybe I don't remember it because just it's a false memory, but maybe I actually did do it. But what if at some point during one of these webinars, because I've talked about it, I went across the street with a Molotov cocktail and threw it at my neighbor Dave's house, then went in the middle of the street, pooped in a bag, lit it on fire, put it in front of my neighbor Josh's house, rang the doorbell. He came out, saw a bag on fire, stomped on it. Now he's got fiery poop on his shoe, and I laugh at him. And then I shoot a couple of geese that are flying over my house on the way back, and then I come back here and I finish the webinar. Now, is it a possibility? Yeah, it is. It is. It's absolutely possible that I could or I could have done that. Is it probable? I'm going to go with very, very low probability right there. But it is a possibility, right? So I've talked about it enough. Did I talk about it because I actually did it? Well, I don't think so. And I'm going to just go with that. But you know what? I'm okay without having the 100% certainty that I would probably like to have on something of that either as well too. So, how about for you, Joey? Were there false memories or things ever that popped in that were hard to deal with or sit around with?
I personally haven't ever dealt with false memory, but I can relate to basically poking back at OCD and almost making a mockery out of the thought. Whereas if I specifically using harm, for example, if I were to have a thought of stabbing someone and
Yeah.
there are other people in the room, I would then say to myself, yeah, I'll stab that person, then I'll stab everyone else in the room in addition to. And it almost makes light of it, even
Mhm.
though it's dark, but it's like taking the power back from the thought.
Yeah, it's pulling the rug out from the OCD, right? I mean, you're
Hmm.
just you're knocking its knees, basically. You're, as the Irish would say, you're taking the Mickey out of it. You're just,
There you go.
yeah, yeah. You're you're not allowing OCD to be like, just the
The
only
bully
thing.
that it is.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. That's
Hmm.
exactly what it is. Delia says, "Hey, Dr. McGrath, what's your way of working through guilt feelings and also exhaustion from being uncomfortable all the time, and also shame too? I feel like guilt, regret, and shame work together with anxiety to create a distress cocktail." Yeah, they do, because remember, OCD uses whatever it can at its fingertips to cause you to feel crappy enough to do a compulsion. So if OCD is going to make you feel guilty and that gets a compulsion, that's what it's going to do. If OCD causes you to feel shame, that's what it's going to do if that gets a compulsion. And if OCD induces regret and that gets a compulsion, bam, it's going to use it. So if that's the distress cocktail for you and your OCD knows these are the things that gets you to do the stuff that I want you to do, that's what it's going to throw at you all the time. And as
Hmm.
long as you keep doing the compulsions, you're going to be exhausted and you're going to keep wondering, oh my gosh, why do I keep doing this stuff? And why does OCD keep throwing this at me? And it's basically this: OCD's smart enough to know that when it throws this at you, it wins. And that's what it's therefore going to keep doing until you stop doing the compulsions.
Hmm.
Right. Joey, how about, what kind of emotions came with your OCD? Was there guilt or shame or those types of things for you as well, too? Or what?
100%. I was very much so ashamed of what I was enduring, and I felt guilty because I was more so worried about how it would impact those closest to me, specifically loved ones, and also my family and my friends. But I was fearful of bringing shame upon myself as
Mhm.
well as them. And that was a very hard obstacle for me to get over and realize that I truly had nothing to be ashamed of because this is not something I signed up for. This is
Mhm.
something that was involuntarily, unfortunately, bestowed upon me, if you will.
Mhm.
And once I realized that I can relinquish that, it was a very freeing feeling for me.
Mhm. Yeah. It is unfortunate that OCD knows no lows that it will take people to in order to get people to do its bidding of doing a compulsion,
Hmm.
right?
Absolutely. The hardest part of compulsions for me was grasping the idea and the concept of the fact that if you give in to performing a compulsion, you're only providing yourself temporary relief.
Yeah.
And it further, I feel, ignites the fire that comes with having OCD. And it's been, for me, all about extinguishing that ever since realizing that and accepting it and actually practicing it.
Hmm. Yeah. Elijah says, can HOCD, or now we call sexual orientation OCD, reduce your attraction to the opposite gender? I've been confused lately. Yeah. Whenever you ask a question that can any kind of OCD do something, the answer is almost always absolutely. It can lead to something like that. So, um, you know, in sexual orientation OCD, straight people can doubt their identity. Gay people can doubt their identity. Bisexual people can doubt their identity. People who are trans can doubt if they're trans, right? So it is unlimited. It is not a question about any kind of preference, right? It is a question about what if suddenly I am not. Joey, you said your partner is a male. Your sexual orientation to you would look like, what if tomorrow you woke up and let's say you were walking down the street and you saw an attractive female, and then you wondered, wait, why did I think she's attractive? I'm not supposed to think she's attractive. Oh my gosh, does that mean I'm not gay or something?
Right.
I mean, that's what sexual orientation OCD would be, right? So, and then you would go home and you would check with your partner. Do we love each other enough? And what if I've lied to you this whole time? And what if it's not true that, and all these kinds of things. And you would be doing compulsions then, right? Because you'd be seeking reassurance and all of those types of things in that type of situation. And of course, your partner wouldn't be able to give you enough reassurance that you two were actually meant for each other and loved each other enough and all those things, because OCD, as the doubting disorder, would throw the doubt in there. Yeah.
There's not enough reassurance to go around in order to provide and fulfill OCD.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Sleepy says, I feel defeated. Well, let's see what's going on there. I have OCD fears about the present moment. Everyone always tells you to come back to the present moment when you have OCD thoughts, and my thoughts are about that. I can't understand what presence is, and that each new moment is constantly happening. So this would be kind of an existential type of OCD, of having to understand what it means that there's always something new happening and every moment is a new moment. So Sleepy, what I would want to do with you if I was working with you is really kind of explore this concept of existential OCD, this notion that you have to fully understand everything, that from a philosophical standpoint, you have to know how everything works, and you have to know the meaning and reasons behind it, and the mind-blowing aspect, if we all think about it, of, what is time and where does it come from, and what is a new moment, and what does the present mean. But now that I've said the word present, and that it was said already, that means it's now in the past, and then the future is the next word I'm going to say, but now that word is in the past as well too, because now I've already said it. And we could get very stuck on these types of things and have to figure them out. But that again would be an OCD trick that would say to us that we have to figure these things out, because there are billions of people in the world who are just like, oh, okay, whatever, this is the present, okay, yeah, great, and don't think about the past or the future. Now, you Sleepy, you might say, I don't understand how people do that. That's where you would work with a good therapist who would be able to show you that that was the case. And Sleepy, I'll bet there was a point in your life where you weren't thinking like that until the existential OCD really set in. So it's not that you don't know how to do it at all, because you've probably done it. It's just that something's getting in the way of you doing it the way that you used to do it. And we would like to help you get back to that. Sherry says, happy Thanksgiving. Good. Nina says, hey, Doc, happy holidays. Wonder if your advice is on somehow. Sometimes there's a typo, so I have to read it again. Wondering your advice is somehow who can seem to stop thinking OCD. Oh, is there anyone who could stop thinking OCD thoughts at all? Whether it's the theme or about recovery or about ERP, it's frustrating. Here's the thing. I don't have OCD, and I'm going to bet, Joey, and I want you to tell me what you think about this, all right? Joey, I'm going to bet I have almost as many intrusive thoughts a day as you do. And I'm going to tell you why, first of all. Number one, because I'm human, and every human being has intrusive thoughts and images and urges. And number two, I've treated so many people with OCD over the last 23 years that I've absorbed pretty much every intrusive thought that they have. And now it's hard to do anything in my life at all without associating it with some patient that I've treated at some point in time and the intrusive thoughts they have. So, Joey, if you and I were standing at a staircase right now, I think about throwing you down the stairs, because I've treated people who have thrown people or been afraid of what if they were to throw people down the stairs. And Joe, if we were walking down the sidewalk, I'd think about tripping you, because I've treated people who are afraid. What if I were to trip someone? I have very little that I can do in my life at this point that doesn't involve some intrusive thought that I can associate to a patient that I've treated at some point in my career.
Right. Chances are I would probably have those identical thoughts as well.
Yeah. Exactly. Right.
If I'm being 100% candidly honest.
Yeah. So Joey, we might be neck and neck in terms of who has the most intrusive thoughts. Now, one of us in this phone call has OCD and one does not. You don't have to have OCD to have tons of intrusive
No,
thoughts.
everyone has them. The difference is the stickiness in between them.
Yes. Thank you.
Mhm.
And I'm glad you say that, Joey, because I want people to hear that coming from you as a person with OCD, that the problem is not the intrusive thoughts
Not at all.
or the images or the urges. Because if they were, then everybody who experienced them, which would be everybody in the world,
Would have
would be
OCD.
would have OCD. Right.
Hmm. No, it's the stickiness, unfortunately, and the becoming stuck with those thoughts, with those feelings, with those urges or sensations, whatever they may be. That's the problem. And overcoming them is the goal. And I feel that that takes time and that takes effort, but it's 100% doable, and I'm living proof of it.
Yeah.
Again, when I say I'm not OCD free, there's no cure, as we all know, and I don't know if there ever will be. But again, with recovery being linear, it's not about a destination. For me, it's about a journey.
Yeah. And what this I've never asked this question on the webinar actually, but it's popped into my
Mhm.
head. What have you learned about yourself going through this experience?
I always thought I was strong because I have been someone throughout the 30 years that I've now been here, dealt with a lot throughout a very short period of time in my life, in my younger adult years and childhood, and I had to be. But OCD and this entire ordeal and experience has taught me that I am stronger than I ever thought I would have to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that I have the ability to truly conquer anything and everything, because for me, not having complete control of my mind was, and still is, thought wise, the scariest thing for me. And regaining that composure over myself and the strength that came with that just went to show that I was far too strong to give up and let go. And I'm so grateful. I'm so thankful. I'm so fortunate that I didn't, because I now can literally practice what I preach. Case in point, me being here right now. And I love that. And I've been on my own little journey of advocacy ever since reaching a point of recovery. And I feel that that is so rewarding for me,
Mm-hmm.
that the strength that it takes to get to this place just goes to show how truly strong you really are and can be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, Thank you for that, and
Of
I think that
course.
will be inspiring for people to hear that
Thank you.
you can get to that point, even when you go from checking yourself into an inpatient unit because you don't
Mhm.
know if you're going to be able to be alive anymore,
Mhm.
to being here on a webinar now and telling everyone. I mean, gosh, what what broader life experience could someone have than that, right?
It's like night and day. And I honestly can say that if I were to, since we were talking just before about present moment, past, future, if someone told me this then, in those deepest, darkest times, or even when I was checked in, because those were the deepest, darkest times for me to date in my life, I would have never believed it. It just took life experience to get to this point. And when I say life experience, I mean this journey leading up to it in recovery.
Mhm. Yeah. Sunshine asks, any advice on when your partner is helping with ERP exercises? He helps me with our planned ERP, but it takes away from our married life, always talking about OCD. Should he not be involved in the ERP? I think there's a time and a place for people to be involved in ERP. And I think that there's also a time and a place where your partner can say, hey, I'm going to take a step back now and let you work on some of those things too. Joey, your partner is obviously very aware of your OCD. What is it like for the two of you
Absolutely.
in your experience with that?
Well, his name is David. David's very well aware. He is definitely 100% supportive. And he only gets involved if and when it is that I request him to. For instance, if I'm working with my now therapist, Tiffany, and my homework, if you will, is to work on exposures with David or at least make him aware of them, those are the times that I would say he goes out of his way to be a part of my ERP therapy. But other than that, like you said, you hit the nail on the head. There's a time and a place for it all. I think that overdoing it is counterproductive, and it is more so something that should be worked on for the patient first and foremost themselves, other rather than with their partner at all times, because
Yeah.
then things start to blend, and I don't feel like there's always an appropriate, again, time and an appropriate place for ERP. I feel like you should be able to live your daily life, but also bring ERP into it if and when it is an appropriate time and place.
And sometimes there's spontaneous exposures and you're
Yeah.
just going to have to deal with those. And,
Hmm.
for a partner who understands, I think you could probably have a hand signal or a gesture that just says, hey, give me a minute. I'm working on something. I'll be back with you in a few moments. Right.
Exactly.
The other thing that I've liked, I've introduced in a lot of couples and even families, this, what I call a worry journal, where if there's a question that's asked more than once, then on a notebook on the dining room table or wherever you want it, the other people of the family go and they write the question down and then they write down the answer. And then in the future, if the question's ever asked again, everyone just says, oh, that's in the notebook. And it prevents anyone from getting back involved in the same conversation that they've been involved in before.
Hmm. I
And that
like
really
that.
helps to pull people out of doing some of these things over and over again.
That's a really good idea. Mhm.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It's that therapy thing, it comes through sometimes.
Yes.
Sabrina asked about NoCD support groups. And if you could take, you can continue to attend them if you're taking a break between therapists. Sabrina, I would reach out to Tia, who runs our support groups, to check in on that. Sorry, I don't have an answer to that one. CRS says, I have contamination OCD around smoke and vape, and my ex does both of those and wants to be with our baby for the holidays without me around and won't change clothes before interacting with the baby. So I'm assuming CRS, then you're thinking that this will contaminate the baby is kind of what you're thinking about. And the way, unfortunately, the for the way that your OCD wants to look at things, right? Um, we don't have a law that says that you cannot be around children if you haven't changed your clothes after smoking or vaping. So I think the best thing that you could do is you can make the request that your ex do that, but um, when your child is with your ex has the custody, and unfortunately, in the way you're looking at it, right, has the right to do what they would want to do. Um, and there is the way that we are set up, there's nothing illegal about smoking or vaping, I would assume, where you live, which therefore means that they have the right to do that, and they also have the right around your child to do that as well too, if that's the case. So this would be definitely a focus for working on for you with your therapist, right? Now, I can say as someone who's over 50, um, and Joey, I don't know about you or your family, but man, everybody smoked when I was a kid. I mean, it was just like, who didn't
So
smoke back then, you know? Uh,
I actually didn't grow up
mhm,
in a smoking household,
mhm.
but I developed smoking myself as a
Yeah. Okay.
teenager, very young.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. And
And I currently vape.
and you, but you could, I think, also understand from an OCD perspective how OCD could look at that as being something
Oh,
very dangerous or contaminating, right?
absolutely, of
Yeah.
course.
So
And I think that would
CRS
be a great exposure for Sierra. Is that correct?
CRS is what they put. Mhm,
Oh, CRS.
mhm.
I think that that would be a great exposure for them to allow whatever is going to transpire with the other parent and their baby and basically be uncertain about it.
Right. And that's what it is, right? Because even even if that person changed their clothes, they might go to another friend's house who is vaping or smoking. You know,
Exactly.
we just don't know. And OCD, of course, will run to the worst case scenario. Well, what if they take the baby to another house and then both of them are vaping in the house or something, and then blah 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 blah, blah, right?
It
Like
goes on and on.
yes, it does. It's always going to run to the worst case scenarios.
Hmm.
You know, unfortunately, none of us live in a chemical-free world, right? There are all sorts of things floating in the air now that we're breathing in that probably aren't the greatest for us, no matter where we're at or anything, or in the water we drink, or in the food we eat, or anything we could, you know. I look at some things and you just see this product was shown in the state of California to cause cancer. It's like, okay, well, um, we all live in a world of uncertainty, and we can't be certain, you know. And on one hand, we know that there are good things to do for your health, like smoking is not a great thing for your health. We're very aware, and Joey, you know that consciously, right?
I'm
Even
very well aware. Yes.
right. But we also know, like, I mean, people have heard me talk about my wife here, who never smoked a day in her life, who developed lung cancer and some other types of cancers that came along with it and died from that. And so, I mean, some people just get things too, right? I mean, we can't protect ourselves and everyone 100%, even though OCD tells us that we can and that we should, and that we're bad people and if we don't. But we just can't ever achieve what OCD wants us to achieve, right? And it's tough, and I know that no one likes to hear that message, but it's the truth.
Right. It's very similar. I lost my father.
Mhm.
Right. I lost my late father to throat cancer, and he never smoked a day in his life. So,
Yeah,
you're never 100% certain when it comes to that.
absolutely not. Yeah, no, sorry to hear that. Virginia says, "How can I help with intrusive thoughts
Thank you.
about possibly harming someone? Like it makes me feel like I'm out of reality, and then my intrusive thoughts affect my memory, and that turns into a false memory." You're smiling, Joey. You wanna run on that one?
It's like the story of my life.
Yeah.
Uh, how can she do what now was the exact question?
How can I help with intrusive thoughts about possibly harming someone? Like it makes me feel like I'm out of reality, and then my intrusive thoughts affect my memory, and then it turns into a false memory.
Well, unfortunately, we can't control our intrusive thoughts. They are intrusive for a reason.
That they are.
And the only thing that we can do is accept them and not try to perform any compulsions, such as thought replacement, neutralizing them, or anything along those lines. We just have to accept again the uncertainty of them, because you're never going to be 100% sure whether or not any of those harmful thoughts can or will come true. Because even with someone without OCD, I was actually recently having this conversation with one of my close friends. Her and I were in her kitchen, and coincidentally, for whatever the reason, it's actually become comical at this point. There's always a scissor, a knife, or something along those lines
Sure.
as soon as I get to her house, just lingering around. And at first, when I was earlier on in my stages of recovery, I would, and she would know to request to put it away, remove it. But then over time, we collectively decided for exposure purposes, the best thing for me was to have it there and present, because removing it was a compulsion for me. Even though I wasn't doing it myself, it was being removed. So we then jumped into the conversation that on the flip side of that, she herself or anyone else for that matter, there's no 100% for certain that they won't stab me. Just because I have a thought of stabbing them doesn't make me any more susceptible to doing so.
Yep.
They themselves can do just the same as well.
We could all get stabby. So,
Exactly. It could just be one big stab fest.
yeah. Exactly. Right. Yeah.
God forbid. But I would say that the best thing that can be done would be to accept whatever harmful thoughts you're having and practice living with uncertainty, and work with your therapist. If you don't already have one, definitely get one, and practice ways to go about the acceptance of those thoughts and how to move on and move forward with them, and not allow them to create false memories that don't exist, because I'm sure anything harmful that's being thought about is not something that they have done.
I think the question's interesting too. How can I help with intrusive thoughts about possibly harming someone? Should none of us drink coffee tomorrow at Thanksgiving because we could spill some hot coffee on our relative in the chair next to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Should none of us use anything but blunt knives because what if we accidentally drop a knife and it lands on someone's foot at the table next to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Should nobody carry a large platter of food because what if they bump into someone and it spills upon them and it burns them because there's some hot gravy on it or something of that nature? I mean, the notion that we could live with no possibility whatsoever of harming or being harmed is, of course, ridiculous, right? But
Absolutely.
OCD is ridiculous because OCD says you can live that way. You can live without the possibility of harm to self or others. You just haven't
Which is
figured it out
unfair.
yet. Well,
Mm-hmm.
yes. Yeah, and that's why it's ridiculous, because
Mm-hmm.
OCD is a liar, a
Mm-hmm.
consistent, constant bully of a liar.
And realizing that has been so rewarding for me, because you, or I rather, become so, how would you say, motivated to take back your life from this imaginary bully.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Sonny says exposure is excruciating and it never seems to get better. Help. Sonny, my first thing when I hear that from anyone is to ask and to make sure that you're working with a therapist and you're not just trying to do ERP by yourself. Because I'm wondering if there's still areas where response prevention needs to happen, because subtle safety behaviors do make exposure excruciating and just seem to go on forever, because people either don't habituate or get that change in belief that they would like through inhibitory learning because of the subtle safety behaviors that continue to go on. So, Sonny, that's what I would want you to really work on, is challenging if there are any subtle safety behaviors that are still occurring while you're doing the ERP that you're doing. Lots of happy Thanksgivings. Talking about uncertainties here. Let me just kind of go down a little bit, a little here, and lots of thank yous as well too. So yeah, oh man, this is good stuff. Everyone, thankful for us having been here tonight, and thankful for all of you being here tonight as well too. Joey, I always like to give people at the end a little chance just to, say your piece. What would you like to let everybody know, or help motivate people, or something of that nature, and kind of take us out toward the end here?
First and foremost, I would like to say that I'm thankful that everyone joined us tonight who did join us and allowed me to even speak my piece on this, and let them know that if I could be here tonight, it's possible for any of them to be able to be here in the future as well. Because, like I said earlier this evening, if anyone told me at my lowest of lows that I would be sitting on a webinar with the director of NOCD and having a live Q&A, I would have laughed. Well,
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have been capable of laughing at the time,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I definitely would not have believed it. And believing in yourselves is the hardest, I feel, battle in this, but it's also the most rewarding. And the strength that comes with that is unmatched. It's like nothing else. And not giving up on yourself, not only for yourself, but for others, for your loved ones, for your family, your friends. For instance, I have 4 fur babies, they're my life.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone and everyone who you can hang on for in addition to, it's worth it. Because if I can get to this place and say these words, then I know someone else, others in addition to Ken, and what I wanted, what I needed during my darkest times was relatability. And I hope that I've been able to provide that for anyone and everyone, even if it's just one person this evening, because it is life changing. And I know that because I once was in the position where, again, I felt like I was one of one, the only one experiencing OCD, harm OCD, perfectionism, puro, regardless of your subtype. But fighting for your life, for your mental stability, your sanity, your overall peace of mind, it's worth it. And no CD is a major power player in that, in my opinion, not only for me, but for others as well. And I am so thankful, I'm so grateful, and I will forever praise the likes of yourself and no CD.
Well, Joey, thanks for being here. We really do appreciate it, and your very open and honest discussions about what's going on in your life and OCD and how it's worked in your world. So thank you so much for
Been my
that.
pleasure.
A reminder to everyone, tonight's webinar brought to you by NOCD. NOCD, a downloadable app you can get through Google Play or iOS. Check us out if you're looking for teletherapy across the world. We are there for you in the United States or Canada or the UK or Australia. And if you're looking for help for hoarding or other issues like tics or body-focused repetitive behaviors, we're available to work with you on those as well too. And finally, if you're looking for even information about OCD, please check us out, because we would be happy to just provide information to friends or family and things as well too. So Paul Melia with our theme song taking us out again here. It is great to be with you one more time on Wednesdays. Joey, thank you so much for joining us.
Happy
Everyone,
Thanksgiving.
have a great Thanksgiving, and may you not let OCD be the turd in the punch bowl at your party tomorrow. All right? Enjoy yourselves, everybody. Have a good one.